The Tennessee Valley Authority has announced plans to more than double the amount of solar that they have within that operating region. Joe Manchin has introduced a bill to the U.S. Senate to reform how interconnections take place on the grid. And a jury has awarded $135.5 million in a solar array soil runoff case down in Georgia. I'm Jay Warmke with Blue Rock Station, and this is the news from the solar industry for the week of May 15th. All right, well, the Tennessee Valley Authority has announced that they have plans to more than double the amount of solar available within that operating region. They have issued what they announced in quotes is the nation's largest ever request for clean energy. Currently, TVA, which is a federally operated utility, has about 1.6 gigawatts of solar within their operating region. They've announced bids for an additional 6 gigawatts, 40 different projects that'll happen over the next 3 years. And by the year 2035, they're looking at adding an additional 10 gigawatts of solar capacity to their system. Now, the TVA serves about 9 million customers. Pretty much their service area is all of Tennessee, parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Georgia, North Carolina, and a little bit of Virginia. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin has introduced a bill into the U.S. Senate on May 2nd to reform how the permitting process goes through when you're doing interconnection of large generating systems onto the grid. Currently, this process takes between 5 and 10 years to get approval for these large systems to be connected. The bill that's been introduced would limit to 2 years the NEPA review process. The NEPA is something that's part of the National Environmental Policy Act. So they're limiting that to 2 years and limiting it to 1 year for what are deemed to be low impact projects. They also limit the amount of court challenge time that can take place within this. Now, as a result, about 290 environmental groups have sent a letter to the Biden administration protesting or airing opposition to this particular bill. They claim that this will be a huge windfall to the fossil fuel industry and that the reforms to the permitting process really needs a system-wide wholesale change as opposed to tinkering around the edges, as they have claimed, changes that focus on distributed energy as well as energy efficiency. Now, the White House has announced that while they don't love all parts of this bill, they will support it. It's worthy to look at the fact that about 95% of all of the projects that are out there waiting approval for interconnection are actually renewable energy projects. There has been a recent award by a jury down in Georgia. They awarded $135.5 million to a Georgia couple who filed suit against a solar project on land adjacent to their property. It was operated by Silicon Ranch Corporation, a Tennessee-based investment firm for solar, as well as IEA, which was the installer. This was for a 100 megawatt, 85-acre project, and prior to the project taking place, according to this lawsuit, the adjoining property owners had been assured that groundwater mitigation systems would be in place to prevent it. This was being installed in what is effectively a hunting and fishing area, and there was a lot of concern about this. When they did begin the project, what they did is just came in and clear-cut 1,000 acres of what had been hunting and fishing grounds, put up the solar array, did nothing to mitigate groundwater runoff, which then soil and silt and sediment flowed into adjoining properties, actually filling up an adjacent lake. It was left unresolved for a period of 2 years. And then, of course, the adjoining property owners filed suit. Well, the jury did find $10.5 million in compensation damages, saying that's how much the people had lost value in their property, and then added an additional $120 million in punitive damages. And as these things go, this is now under appeal. And a study by Northeastern University has projected in their study called the Environmental Research, Sustainability, and Infrastructure, they have found that rooftop areas on factories and warehouses could provide as much as 35% of all of the energy needs for the industrial sector. Now, currently, the industrial sector only gets about 0.1% or 0.1% of their electricity from renewable energy. And that's the news from the solar industry for this week. We'll see you next week.